Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G. I'm hearing feedback. Has somebody got their radio on? Hello? Has somebody got their radio on? Because I'm getting feedback. That's better. Morning, everyone, and welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on Supreme Radio UK. If it's your first time tuning in to Spilling the Tea, welcome, and I hope you'll make this your Saturday morning fix. For those of you that was locked in and hoping to hear the interview with Nigel B, we have had to postpone it for another date. I'm getting feedback, but immediately I get a date, you will know. Now, in the meantime, I have an action-packed show for you that can affect us in one form or another. Now, if it's not your son, your father, your brothers, your husband, your partner, or a male relative, this morning we're opening up a deeply important and sensitive conversation about suicide awareness amongst black men. For generations, many black men have been encouraged to remain strong, keep their emotions hidden, and carry their struggles in silence. But being strong does not mean suffering alone, and asking for help is definitely not a sign of weakness. Throughout today's discussion, we will explore some of the pressures black men may experience, why speaking openly can sometimes feel so difficult, how we can recognize when someone may be struggling, and what we as a family, friends, and community as a whole can do to offer meaningful support. Now, please be aware that today's program will include conversations about suicide and mental health, which some listeners may find upsetting. Please take care of yourself and step away if you need to. This is a safe and compassionate conversation. There is no judgment here, only understanding, encouragement, and hope. So please, let's break the silence, because your voice matters, your feelings matter, and most importantly, your life matters. Now, if you would like to have your say, please WhatsApp message us directly to the studio on +44 7958674099. That's +44 7958674099. It's important to recognise that black men are not one single group, and that suicide is rarely caused by just one issue. Public discussions should avoid suggesting that suicide is inevitable for any community, and should emphasize hope, prevention, like Samaritans. Now, I'm encouraging anyone listening to share their opinions and views, their point of views and matters via WhatsApp text message. It will get you direct to the studio, and the message number is +44 7958674099. Now, I'm here with my co-host Kevin Bennett and two young men in the therapeutic profession, Jamie Martin, who is a counsellor, and David Smith, who is a mental health practitioner. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, all. Good morning.
Right. I want to start off by introducing Jamie to the listeners. Jamie, if you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jamie. I'm a counsellor. I've been working in counselling for 8 years now. I've worked in various different fields, drug and alcohol, youth violence, victim support, general depression and anxiety. That's what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
Right. And David?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is David. I've also been working in the mental health industry for now 6 years in various ways. I've been involved again with drug and alcohol, youth violence, trauma informed, uh, and yes, so different avenues, different pathways to help people, young people and adults as well. So yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And my co host, Kevin Bennett, for those that are just joining us for the first time and don't know who he is. Kevin?
Yes. So my name's Kevin Bennett, as you've just heard, and since 2010, I've been working with companies, brands, organisations, and government bodies, etc., concerning mental health as well, and also just mental health overall. So yeah, that's pretty much myself with all the work that what goes in between it.
Right. Now, and obviously I'm your host, Juliet G. When you guys hear the word black men and mental health, what immediately comes to mind? Kevin, I'll start with you.
When I put on my personal hat, I do think about the struggles and the stresses concerning men's mental health. When I put on my professional hat, I think about just health overall. So mental health doesn't mean the dark side of mental health. It just means mental health overall. So when I think about it from an emotional, impulsive perspective, it's more about thinking about the darkness, what black men may be going through or men overall are going through.
And you, David?
Yeah, so something that really stands out for me in this question is the word black, and through historic and even today, being a black man myself, with I can feel when the word black gets mentioned, I can feel this feeling even within me that there's this negative or there's this distortion in my energy, even just around the word black, and how that can affect even prior and even myself, even feeling this, and how I can try and adapt and think about other black men when that word gets mentioned, how it can feel segregated or separate from the general of men's mental health, if that makes sense, and how there's already the feeling of a back foot or the separation or the less inclusion when the word black men gets added into mental health, and how that can relate into which statistics have shown how black men are the least proportion out of men to access.
How about you, Jamie?
The access counselling.
Oh, sorry.
So for me, what comes to mind, there's so many things that actually come to mind for me, but the word mistrust came to my mind because I know fundamentally there's a lack of trust with black men when it comes to mental health and using the system. Because I know it is so difficult for black men to, go down the traditional avenue of going to the doctors and talking about how they're feeling and then getting a referral so the word mistrust came to mind. I don't know why. That's just the first thing that I thought is just a lack of trust in the system.
How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, that was me. That
Oh,
was me.
oh, sorry.
I jumped in. I jumped in.
We've all stated.
I jumped in.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, what about black men are often expected to be strong, resilient, and able to handle everything? What pressures can that expectation place on a man who is privately struggling?
For me, um, again, what comes to mind is
Sorry, who's talking?
this is Jamie.
Oh, okay.
What comes to mind is I think there is a stereotype of what a black man should be, and that is strong and you know kind of has to kind of go through this world and life like almost bulletproof. And when we're talking about what was the question again? Sorry.
What pressures can,
What pressures
you know,
can come? Yeah,
yeah.
sorry. What pressures can come? Um, I think for me, what pressures can come is having to feel like the world is on your shoulders, and naturally, when you feel like the world is on your shoulders, it's a that's a lot to take on for someone, especially if you're struggling with your mental health.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you know, when I think about it, right, it's heartbreaking because I think about this a lot. When I think about moments where black men especially expressed themselves on social media, for example, like Tyrese when he cried, and the community, I believe, was very unforgiving,
Mm.
you know, when he was crying about his not seeing his daughter. And in those moments, in the name of entertainment, the world becomes very ruthless. And I notice overall that black men, when black men tend to express themselves on social media or in public settings, they tend to end up being memes, and that that mistrust within the black community and black men start to cover up a bit more, and then pressure burst pipes. So it's not just Tyrese, there's a whole list of black men who, when they have an emotional moment or a breakdown in public, the environment, especially our community, if we're going to be talking about communities, our community are very unforgiving in those moments historically. And what we learn as black men is, if you share your emotions in public, you're going to be embarrassed. Or sometimes if you share your emotions to women, sometimes the women will throw it back in our faces. So we suffer in silence to the place of suicidal ideation because there's no outlet. And historically, we haven't been taught to go to therapists. We haven't taught to go to a counselor. We haven't been taught to go to a psychologist or whoever it may be that's a professional. So what happens is we can't share it with our partners because they may throw it in our face. We can't have an emotional moment in public because we'll be a meme. And we haven't been taught to express ourselves to others. So then we kind of walk around built with this built up um, trauma inside of us until one day pressure bursts pipes and then we become the baddie. Just one last part to it. In prisons, they have a thing called mad, bad, and sad. And that's how they would assess a prisoner. Is this a prisoner mad? Is this prisoner sad? Or is this prisoner bad? And no matter where we end up with bad or mad, it normally comes from sad because there's no place to express.
Right. David,
Yes.
is there anything that
So
you'd
for
like to
me,
add?
sorry, say that again.
I said, is there anything that you'd like to say?
Yeah, sure. Just shortly, with the opening sentence in this question, black men are often expected. So with the word expected, not sure why, but I felt like there was like a graft or a chart system that black men within themselves had to meet, especially with the word expected. So I have to expect to meet this level or this graft or this chart that I've been placed in, or that the man has placed himself within. So daily, subconsciously, this feeling of I have to meet this, I have to meet this, I have to meet this. And I'm not talking about the logistics or financially or economically. I'm just talking about within themselves. Every day I'm expected to meet something, and how that can then cause this internal pressure and stuff. So yeah, it's that subconscious or that internal challenge of being on a chart or a graft within yourself that you have to meet. And when are you allowed not to be on the graft or within on that chart that you have to meet certain things?
Hmm. Do you think the saying, I'm fine, has sometimes become a protective mask for black men? What might be hiding behind those words? Kevin?
So can you say that one more time? It just
Do you,
broke up just slightly on my side. Sorry.
do you think the saying, like certain people always say it, when you ask them, how are you doing? And they'll say, I'm fine. Yeah. And has that sometimes become a protective mask for black men? And what might be hiding behind those words? There might be something hiding behind
Uh,
those words.
yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'm fine is normally the first layer of just repelling someone who they may not trust or they may not want to put a burden on. So just saying I'm fine, it's a part of a conversational response, because sometimes we internally know that someone's not really investing in if they're really okay. It's just a part of a conversation opener or an icebreaker. Like, how you doing? And so imagine in that moment that person says, I'm not good. I'm in a dark place. So sometimes we say it in a way, and also it's how it's said. When in the field of therapy, the number one thing has to be empathy, right? So when we, from an empathy perspective, really want to know how someone is doing, we have to really invest in how we ask people. For example, you look in someone's eyes and you may say to them, truly and honestly, how are you? Instead of saying, how are you doing? You're right. And the person just responds, I'm fine. It's a part of just a responsive or reactive mechanism. But when we really take time out to invest in someone, our tonality must change, and how we engage with that person, looking into their eyes and truly being invested in what may come back. So I think it's not what we say sometimes it's how we say it.
How about you, Jamie?
No, do you know what? I second what Kevin has just said. So, a lot of times you have conversations with people and they don't know that I'm a therapist. Um, and when you're talking with people, sometimes it comes up where they might be talking about someone else and they say, "Oh yeah, I asked him how he was doing, and he just went into this diatribe about his life, and I don't want to know all that stuff." So for me, again, what Kevin said, for me, when it comes to asking someone, how are you? How are you doing? As a therapist, yeah, you're right. The number one thing is empathy. I'm trying to understand what's going on. I'm trying to walk in that person's shoes. Um, so so it's like when someone says, "No, I'm okay, I'm fine." It's like armor, but what's beneath that? What's beneath the armor? So it's like it's a massive way of almost just like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about this thing, because ultimately a person wants to feel safe. Like, and this is obviously when I'm doing these sessions and I'm doing counseling sessions, the number one thing is to make the person feel safe. So when I ask that question, that armor is lowered. And it's, do you know what, Jamie? I've had a terrible week. I'm not doing great. I've lost my job. I'm having arguments with my wife. I'm depressed. Whatever it may be, that armor's lowered enough so that then we can start unpacking some of the layers that's going on for them.
How about you, David?
Yeah, so this might be a challenging response to some, but the word I'm fine, they actually may be fine. But what I'm saying is I'm not okay in the place that they may be in. But if someone responds to I'm fine, they may be fine with the current place that they're in. But for me as a practitioner, as Kevin and Jamie has said, this is because I'm going to offer them autonomy with that at first. But as a practitioner, it's how can I stay present within that when I know underneath something isn't fine, but giving them autonomy to say that first, but then to stay present for long enough, which I think is key as well. Where some people outside, in our day to day lives, if you say it, they miss it and they don't stay present enough. And then we end up talking about something else, football or the weather or, the general conversations. But as a practitioner in that moment, is if I can stay present enough while giving them that autonomy at first, and then to see if they will allow themselves to go further into that I'm fine, if that makes sense.
Why can it
Okay.
why can it feel so difficult for some men to admit that they are frightened or overwhelmed or lonely or emotionally exhausted? Anyone?
Um, because see, sometimes it's cultural, right? And when you're not putting, David and it's also kind of pointed towards it as well. But when we're not in a safe place, right? When we're not and when we haven't been designed to be put in a safe place, we tend to have this armor around us, and it's very hard when you've had years of not being able to emotionally trust someone or have a safety net, because what we're learning, especially as black men, that emotionally there's no safety net for the best part. Who do you share certain things with? If your father hasn't dealt with certain things from a generational perspective, then how can your father comfort you, and how does he even deal with his troubles? And a lot of the times the women have got a lot going on as well, and they try their best, but it's very hard for them to understand things from their son's perspective. So where do they go to next? To their friends? Their friends don't have the skills sometimes to deal with it, and they're going through their own things. Where else should they go? The school system's already put them in boxes that it probably led them to a place not to trust. Where do they go next? To the police? Well, that's a whole nother conversation. So there's nowhere to go, and they learn that throughout the years. And sometimes they do finally meet a woman who they may say, "Oh my gosh, I can trust," but then she says to herself, or may say to him at some point, "I want to be with a man. I don't want to be with my son." And I feel like I'm mothering you in this moment. I mean, not with all women, obviously, but that's conversation that's being said sometimes. So where do men go? And men learn that when they're growing up, that emotionally there's no place to regulate.
Right, Kevin, we are coming back from the break, so
Yeah.
if you just bear with me, okay? Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on Supreme Radio UK. This morning, we're having an open and important and sensitive conversation about suicide awareness amongst black men. Now, if you would like to have your say, you can WhatsApp call or even send a WhatsApp message on +44 7958 674099. Now, the question that was asked was, why can it feel so difficult for some men to admit that they are frightened or overwhelmed or lonely or emotionally exhausted? David?
Yeah, so the word feeling. I mean, a lot of people don't want to feel right now. Feelings are scary. So we're in the society of doing. We just do, and we get our feelings from doing. And so we're talking about feeling before doing, and that can be very frightening and very overwhelmed. I mean, even those words alone. I mean, who will really wants to feel frightened or overwhelmed or lonely? So yeah, there's that connotation of, why do I want to feel this? So I just keep doing, if that makes sense.
Okay. Jamie?
I was just thinking about culturally, um, if you look at black men, and I'm not generalizing here, but if you look at black men, a lot of their parents are immigrants, right? And me personally, I always say this: the way a lot of immigrant parents show love is by doing, right? What David said is by, the food is on the table. That's my love. Here's the money for you to go and go on that school trip. There's my love. Um, Here's the money to go and buy that specific thing. Here's my love. There's not a lot of, how was your day? How are things? How are you feeling? Even if you look at the way boys, black men are, when from young, it's almost a weakness to say to someone, "This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through." So what young black boys do as they grow older, they they put that protective armor on, and we go back to what the last question. I'm fine. That's their protective armor. So as David said, for someone to come and say, "This is how I'm feeling," it's I think it's getting better. It definitely, as a therapist, over these last maybe 4 years, it is getting better. We're not nowhere near where we need to be. It's seen as a weakness for a black man to come and be honest and open and say, "This is what I'm going through. This is where I'm at." It's seen as a weakness, and who wants to be weak? Who wants to feel weak? Like, people don't want to feel weak. But I always say to my clients, you've done the hard thing by coming here and saying, this is what I'm going through. You're not weak. You're actually strong. You're sitting in them feelings and you're going through the process with me. That's difficult. To talk about your traumas, your pressures, your life ills, that's difficult. So just to answer the question, I think it's weakness. Black men don't want to feel weak.
Very
Right.
true.
Right. I want to go on to the subject of culture, identity, and expectations. What messages are black boys sometimes given about crying? Because you guys kind of like touched on it, about vulnerability and asking for help as they are growing up.
Um, so I okay. Let me try and be as quick as possible, even though sometimes I go around the houses in order for me to land. Right. So I remember about, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, I done some research on when my parents used to beat me. Right. Just growing up beating, nothing too abusive, but growing up beating. Right. Um, my parents used to say certain things. Yeah. Like, I'm beating you right now because I love you. Right. And I done some research and I realized my parents are from the Caribbean, from Jamaica. And I researched it right back to the slave um, drivers, masters at that time, that they said the exact same words that my parents used to say when they used to beat me or discipline me. There was no change in the words. Every word was word for word. And I realized this was passed down generation to generation. It was passed down to my grandmother. My grandmother passed on to my mother. And then I pretty much passed it on to my son as well. I had to catch myself kind of towards the tail end of it when I started to get more understanding. It just came down from a generation perspective. And so sometimes in life, right, that not being able to say certain things or do certain things is also generational. It goes right back to slavery in some cases, where we've just taken on certain things culturally without questioning it, examining it, and definitely stopping it from recirculating itself. So culturally, we tend to behave the way that our great grandfathers had to behave by not expressing certain emotions or doing certain things in order to survive.
Yeah. How about you, David?
Yeah, touching back onto the slavery part, uh, which 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 is so fundamental within the black culture, and I find that in many spaces, when you touch back onto the slavery, sometimes you could lose the crowd because people feel like you're going back into the sympathy vote, which is unfair because it does have, and it has had such an effect over the many years, uh, even to my age group, which subconsciously you don't realize. So Kevin, that was amazing to touch on, because black men in those days where's the word, were seen as strong, were seen as not to be vulnerable, because considering what they had to endure and what they were going through, without going into details, they were pretty strong men, if that makes sense. And so the expectations upon black boys, again, in my generation, it was very, actually quite specific. It was either you was into sports, or you became a footballer, or you had to some athlete of some sort, or you was on the roads and you was financially making a living that way, whatever that looks like. Or, and then the third option would be you had to be some high profile, someone working in the city, and it was either those three industries to be valued or recognized within your community. Anything outside of that was seen as less than. I think, again, like Jamie touched on earlier, I think it's changing for the better in ways, but there's still this expectation, and it's how do we help dilute the expectation where they can just be them, whatever that looks like, if that makes sense. There were thousands of industries which black men can access. It's just that we've been culturally diversed into it's this, or it's this.
So, how can the phrase such as man up, be strong, or other people have it worse prevent someone from speaking honestly and openly?
This is Jamie. Yeah, just want to say thank you, Kevin, for that last answer. Sorry, for that last answer, because do you know what? I think it's important that I know this is a different question, but I think it's really important that we acknowledge how far some of this stuff does go back. And just to answer this question, it's massively detrimental to hair man up, because again, as me as a therapist, when I'm sat in front of, sometimes a 12, 13-year-old who's struggling to show emotion because they've almost been, I'm going to use the word programmed into, this is how I have to be. Like, this is the way I have to be. I can't show emotions. That's for girls. So and then I'm almost sat there as a counselor. I only get, 50 minutes a week. And I'm saying, do you know what? This is your safe space. This is your space to come and be emotional and be vulnerable. But what happens is then they go back to maybe the parents, the family, the friend group. And for the rest of the week, that friend group is telling them, well, why are you talking about this? Why are you being emotional? That's not what we do. So it's massively detrimental to black men, that phrase, man up. I always say this, right? If someone doesn't feel their feelings, where does that feeling go, right? Think about it. If you're angry and you swallow down your anger, you've swallowed it down. It's still within you. It's going to manifest itself in another way. It's going to manifest itself with you snapping at someone when you're driving, or you snapping at your missus, or you snapping at someone at work, or maybe you're just depressed, you're feeling low. You're like, why am I feeling low? Why am I upset? Why can't I get out of bed? And it comes in so many different ways. And it all comes from that word where it's like, man up, forget what you're going through, get on with life. And it's so bad for black men to hear that phrase.
Yeah, Kevin, if you mind, I'll just jump in here because I'll be brief with this one. So with man up, if I was to cut that in half, there's two real problems there. So if someone was to say man up, the first part man, and then the man himself would think, but I am a man. So immediately there's that feeling of feeling less than the man that he may be, that he already is, and then up. So when you say man up, so the black man can feel like, oh, so there's more, or there's supposed to be more, but then he may feel like I'm giving everything that I have, and I am a man, which then could shut a black man down in that space where he goes, well, I'm giving what I can. I thought I was manning up within myself. So yeah, it can just shut them down completely.
No, I think both our brothers said it perfect. I'm happy to go to the next question, but really powerful, really powerful. True.
Okay. How might racism, financial pressure, unemployment, relationship breakdowns, fatherhood, or feeling unable to provide affect a man's emotional well-being?
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to put into one.
It's a lot. There's a lot that people have to go through, though. That's a lot.
No, yeah. I'm
About
saying
5
just to kind of
questions
like
in that
dissect
question.
and Yeah, it's a loaded question. Let me try and find some common ground in it. So a common ground in all what you've said is, here's the thing, right? Now, men's mental health does vary based upon its situation, based upon what region of the world you're in. So, for example, racism um, affecting a black man's mental health in Africa, for example, is going to be less than the racism and a black man's health in, for example, the UK or Sweden or Finland or the United States, or so it does slightly change based upon the region where you're in, right? Um, but here's the thing: when you don't, I think no matter what happens, it's always going to boil down to your surroundings, your culture, and your surroundings. We're all going to be affected by mental health in one form or another, right? It could be death, it could be grieving a relationship. We're all going to be affected. People don't understand, even when we're grieving, we could be grieving a lifestyle that we once had. We could be grieving finances we once had. So grief doesn't sometimes mean someone passing away. It all depends on the surroundings that the person may have around them and the resources with their surroundings that they have around them that affects them. That's the only generalization I can have to match it all. And I think what is important that we must point towards more than anything else is to ask ourselves, who do we have around us, and what can we put around a man in order for that man to be able to navigate life itself from a mental health perspective, because everything's going to come to attack you at one point. If it's business, if it's a relationship breakup, if it's whatever it may be, we need to put provisions around our brothers of all ages, and obviously our sisters, but we're talking about men right now, our brothers, in order for them to survive each part of what life is going to put give to them.
Yeah, I'm in agreements with Kevin there. I think I always say, again, when I work with black men, black boys, I always say your support system is so important. Who's the person you can go to outside of therapy and say, let's go get a coffee. Let's go, let's go to the gym together. Do you know what? I'm just going to be in the park later. Do you want to come? Like, that support system is, again, when we talk about what Kevin said about grieving comes in many different forms, like, that support system is so fundamentally rich to you if you have it. So I don't want to say advice to people is, if you are struggling and you don't feel like as though you have anyone, and maybe therapy is um not accessible for you, because I know obviously waiting times and it can be expensive to have therapy, right? I always say, you know what, is there any free clubs that you can go to? Because do you know what, before I did therapy, I worked in a gym, right? And when I was training to work in this gym, one of the things the trainer said to me was, you're going to get people who come to just talk. And I was like, what? It's a gym. What do you mean? And as I started working in this gym, the amount of black men who would just come in and just talk to me. They might go on one or two machines for 20 minutes, but they might spend half an hour just chatting with me. So I always say, look for what can you do? How can you enrich your support system? Because that conversation where you talk to someone on the phone and they make you laugh about the Instagram video or the story that happened to them, that can well and truly save a life. That conversation you have with your brethren can be the thing that makes you, you might be feeling a 2 out of 10. It might be the thing that takes you up to a 6 out of 10. And now you're feeling better. And now, do you know what? I am feeling better. I am going to go to that christening, or I am going to go to that. And then the spiral effect goes on from there. So I would say your support system is so important when it comes to black men's mental health. What's your support system like? Make sure, I always say this as well, make sure it's the right people. It's not people, like Kevin said previously in one of the other questions, it's not someone who's going to throw something back in your face as soon as there's an argument. Oh, well, you told me this. Make sure it's not that. Make sure it's the right people. That's what I would say, yeah.
David?
Yes. Something, a word, or a two-part word that stands out for me with this question is the feeling of being enough. And so growing up, come from the generation where we were trainer mad, you know, trainers, and how trainers could make me feel enough because I got the brand new Nikes on, or I've got this outfit on, and that would give me the feeling of being enough. If I'm allowed to share just a brief story on a personal, so being a father, I always had that internal battle, like, am I doing enough? Am I being enough? And obviously through my journey within my own therapy and my own recovery, and then obviously giving back now, one of the best shops I found that I can take my children to and have the best experience is a charity shop, because it has everything in it. It's Wonderland, where prior to the journey of how can the pressures of employment, relationship, break down fatherhood, and being able to provide, I used to take them to other shops that were way more expensive, having that feeling of not feeling good enough for them. So I needed to explore more expensive stuff, but not experiencing the feeling of feeling enough. Where now, going on that journey of being enough before the material things, the charity shop is the best shop we can go to, because the experience that we can all have within it, and it's cost effective, obviously.
Right. Faith can be a tremendous source of strength. How can churches and faith communities support men while also recognizing when professional help may be needed?
Now this one is very, very, very interesting. So I don't know if I will still call it my hypothesis at this point because I would like to get more data on it. But it's definitely leading towards the first thing I've got to say is people that I've come across overall that are atheists tend to have a higher suicide rate than people that are faith-led. And I think that's so important. Who do we believe in and what do we believe in when we are in a dark place, right? I've got to definitely point at that first. But the next part of it is this. With faith being important, it's also important that whoever we choose to lead us in the journey or the adventure or the process of faith is just as important, because this is where we see, I don't want to be talking about, well, I will, I'm kind of unapologetic, but this is where we see the problems with these stagnations and all of that, where a lot of children are turning to what they believe is someone or an organization that's going to help them with their troubles, and they're being manipulated in the process. So I believe faith is important, but who do we turn to in those moments of faith? Because churches and other, faith-led denominations and etc. are hospitals. When people normally go to them, they're going to them in a broken state. So the question is, who do you turn to, and do those people have morals and ethics in that process? And I think that's important. I know I've kind of broken it up in different sections, but each one of them I think stands on its own conversation.
Yeah, Kevin said it, and I'm glad he said it, because yes, I have had some not so nice stories working with clients and in different faiths, where it's almost as though they go to the whoever they go to with the problem, and it's almost like to the side and shunned. And this is where, again, I talk about when the last question I answered, your tribe. What's your tribe? And the church can be fantastic for you to go somewhere and you to say, this is how I'm feeling. But I think what works well is when the pastor or the people within the church have the knowledge to say, do you know what? We're going to support you in the way we know, but how about you also try something professionally, or how about you try something outside of this, right? I think sometimes this isn't just a church specific thing, but I think sometimes people have to know their limitations and say, why don't you try this specific thing? Why don't you try and do this specific thing, right? Because also it's powerful if, I don't know, if a young black man goes to his church and says, I'm having mental health problems, this is how I'm feeling, and the people within the church say, do you know what? Why don't you try this therapeutic approach? I tried it. That young person is more likely to try it now because trusted people within the church are telling him to do it, right? So they can support him in their way, with scripture and praying and all that sort of brilliant stuff. But they also know their limitations and say, you know what, we're going to support you this way and you can go over there. I have a thing that I say to people, right? If there's a pizza, right, and I gave you a pizza and it was just the bread and the tomato sauce, you would look at me and say, that's not a pizza. If I gave you a pizza and it had bread, tomato sauce, cheese, and pepperoni, you would say, oh, that's a pizza. The analogy I'm giving is this. Every topping you put on that pizza, one topping might be church, another topping might be therapy, another topping might be you gonna play five-a-side every week. And I always say, put loads of toppings on your pizza. Don't just try one thing. Church is fantastic. But what if you went church, went therapy, played football, went gym on a Sunday? Think where your mental health would be. So church can be brilliant, but I don't think it's the ultimate answer. It is brilliant. It's just one thing of loads of different toppings, if that makes sense.
Just to end this question.
That's a powerful analogy, but yes, sorry, go.
Just to end this one briefly is, yes, a power greater than yourself can be a tremendous source of help. I think we have to remember that if, and we're talking about black men here, if a black man was to access support or therapy session or counselling session, it's an hour a week. It's one session a week. So technically it's 1 hour, one per week. So yes, accessing other supports, like Jamie said with the analogy of the pizza and the toppings and what can be added, these are separate entities throughout the week, which then add throughout the month and then throughout the year. Yes, there has been a negative consultation around it recently, but like anything, I think it also relates to going back to one of our previous questions. The black man has to understand his feelings. So if they are found within a negative space, within a power greater than himself, whether that be church or religion or some faith, then going back to one of our questions, he would have to be brave enough with his own feelings to know that this isn't the space that's helping me along, adding along to my sessions. So that's my answer to that question.
Do mainstream mental health services always understand the cultural experiences of black men? And if not, what needs to be improved?
Very good question.
Very good.
Do you know what? You have to understand the educational system in order to understand where this problem lies. For example, when you go into the educational system, like the foundation of psychology, for example, they may talk about Sigmund Freud, right? And so a lot of the educational system is based upon Sigmund Freud. The problem with Sigmund Freud, many problems with Sigmund Freud, there were many problems, but one or two of them was the fact that when he was writing his papers and he was building his theories, they were built around white people, not black people, right? And it was also built around a certain type of white people. And so when you're given that education based upon people like Sigmund Freud, white men, there was just white men on top of white men, examining white people on top of white people, and then black people come into the mix, there's not enough frameworks, and there's not enough theories that support how black people think, how black people's cultures work, and all the rest of it. That's why we need more therapists, more black therapists, especially black men in the sector to rewrite these papers and educate our community on how to deal with men's mental health overall, black people's mental health overall. So there's an educational problem going right back to the early 1900s, coming right up until this current time now, where they still don't understand how to deal with black boys, for example. So they just throw ADHD at them and all these different things. He's a disruptive child. They don't understand the culture of black people. And we need to make changes to that. So I'm so happy that we've got two brothers on here that are in the sector and also understand black people and black boys as well.
Right. We are coming back from the break. Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on Supreme Radio UK, your number one community radio station. We are currently having an open and important and sensitive conversation about suicide awareness amongst black men. And if you would like to have your say or call, please can you WhatsApp call or send a WhatsApp message to +44 7958 674099. And the question that was asked is, do mainstream mental health services always understand the cultural experiences of black men, and what needs to be done to improve this if they don't? So, over to you, David or Jamie.
Yeah. I think Kevin stole my thunder a bit. I was going to say, yeah, Sigmund Freud. Yeah, so the whole person-centered approach is based around Sigmund Freud, right? That's what we learn when we're starting off as counselors. And yeah, Sigmund Freud, all his research evidence was based around white men, and there's some reports that he was a racist. There's some people that have said like he was a racist. So can you imagine? We all work on a framework as counselors for a guy who did all his research and started off with white men and potentially could be racist. So in terms of like representation, in terms of organizations, I think it's representation. I think so. I'll give you a little story. The reason I went into therapy in the first place is because I worked in a sixth form, and it was predominantly, young black boys, young black men, right, in this sixth form. And they used to come to me. They gravitated towards me. It's a natural thing that happens. I was the only black teacher in the sixth form. They just gravitated towards me. They used to come to me and I used to have my office on this specific wing of the college. They would gravitate towards me. They would want to be around me. They would want to talk to me. It's a natural thing. Even little things like I listen to the same music as them. We would talk about music artists together. We would dress the same. And I say that because now I'm working in this field. I see when I go into an organization with black men how it's like, oh yes, that's the counselor. I can see the shoulders drop a little bit, the anxiety drop a little bit, because it's like, this guy talks like me. This guy, was talking about his experience of going on a night out in Brixton and something happening, or going to a house rave. This guy, if I'm older than them, could be an uncle, could be, and that does break down as much as, sometimes, as therapists, we like to say, no, it doesn't matter who's in the room, and hopefully any therapist can work with anyone. There is just something about representation, someone seeing someone in front of them who looks like them, and someone who comes from where they come from. And you know what the funniest thing is, sometimes we might not have the same experience, and that might come out within the therapeutic journey, but it's the initial thought that, we call it building the therapeutic alliance. So what that is basically us just building a relationship, and it helps. It just does. It helps when I'm sorry, I've got so many stories. I came out of one of my buildings that I work in the other day, right? And there was a mum walking with, I think it was a elderly black son, right? Must have been in his 30s. And the mum looked and went, "Oh, you work there?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh, and then the son looked at me and was like, "Oh, like, is that a counselling building?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a counsellor." And they were like, "Oh, how do we sign up?" And I said, "Look, I'll show you how to sign up. Look." And I took his phone and I signed him up, and I said, "I'll work with you." I don't know if that would have happened if that was a white man or a white woman that walked out of the building. So it's massively important. It's representation. It's, I'm lucky enough in one of the organizations that I work in. We've got a very diverse team, and because we've got such a diverse team, we're able to have a diverse client base, and it wasn't like that before we got there. So it's important. It's massively important. Representation.
There was a study done many years ago where they had wired people up to a machine, heart monitor, breathing, eyesight, to screens, and on the screen they would flick images of people's faces, male and female, black and white. And what they found was, whenever there was a image of a black man that was portrayed on the screen, the heart monitor, the eyesight, and the breathing would be distorted, meaning there was an elevation within the person whenever a black face, or especially a black male's face, came onto the screen. So what we really talking about here? So let me try and make sense of that. So are we really saying, even in the therapeutic world, when a young black man walks into that room and the practitioner may be of a different culture or color, are we really saying that the young black man has to first of all regulate the practitioner's nervous system to allow them, to make them feel safe first before they can then start doing the work? That dynamic is crazy. Even before the work started, the young black man has to make the practitioner subconsciously the human before the practitioner, the human before the masters, before the PhD, before the psychodynamic, before whatever they're qualified in. The young black man has to regulate their human nervous system to make them feel safe before the work even could be started. There's something wrong in that.
Yeah.
So my answer to your question simply is no.
Yeah, I've got to say that I love this conversation, because when you have men who understand the community but are also qualified as well, because we have too many unqualified people online, right? A lot of times just talking, causing more damage than helping the community. So I really think this is a powerful conversation. So I just want to say thank you to both of you, because it's really powerful.
Right. How do we create enough time and safety for someone to answer without rushing in to give advice or trying to fix everything?
Sorry, can you say that one more time, please?
How do we create enough time and safety for someone to answer without rushing in to give advice or trying to fix everything.
No one's rushing in.
There
I
you
think
go.
we were all given time.
So you asked for it, Juliet. You got it.
Well, do you know what? That's why I kept my mouth quiet.
It's a bit of an interesting question to answer. How do we? Sorry, just say it one more time. Oh, my deepest apologies. Maybe it's the morning.
Basically, how do we
Mm,
create enough? I'm looking at support and responsibility. So it's offering people the if people want to support someone that are going through a situation. So it's like, what can they do in order to create enough time and safety for someone to answer without rushing in to give advice or try to
right,
fix everything?
May I
right.
give?
Got it. I'm
Oh,
gonna just quickly say this. But both of our brothers said a powerful thing, right? Which is we need to hand people over to professionals. Mental health is not a game, and it's not. It shouldn't be someone else's experiment to work out if they can figure this thing called life out. There's studies there, there's theories there for a reason, and I don't think someone should just wake up one morning and decide that they want to try and experiment with another person's mental health. I think the one thing that someone can truly do, if they really want to help their friend, is try to find um, professionals who are willing to help their friend, possibly for free if they can. But I wouldn't recommend people to just wake up one morning and try to experiment. It's like waking up one day and doing brain surgery. Like, okay, I want to be a brain surgeon. Let me not do no studies. Let me not do anything. Let me just do brain surgery and find the first person who I can come across who needs some form of, invasive surgery done, and let me give it a try tomorrow. So I think hand your friend over to a professional. Find professionals who qualifies first and foremost, because you also have to interview your professionals as well to see if they fit, because there are a lot of professionals out there who may be biased, even though they shouldn't. It's a part of their frame. It's part of their ethics that they shouldn't be biased. But there is subconscious biasness. There's different type of professionals. So understand what your friend's going through. Right, if it's grieving, you have professionals just for grief. You have professionals that may deal with more medicated situations. The person may have schizophrenia. So identify what's going on with your friend or your loved one, and then find a professional who aligns with that. But your friend or your loved one is not going to open up until they're ready. So maybe your work with your friend or loved one would be to try to persuade them gently to find to get in contact with a professional and work with a professional.
Excellent.
David, my response would be a two-part analogy. So I would say, be the role model without trying to be the role model, meaning just stay doing what you're doing. Remember, they are them and you are you. So they will find their journey into that. And if you're a part of that to help them find that, then you're a part of that. But be the role model without trying to be the role model, because they might not be ready for their personal journey yet. So the second part of the analogy would be the shoreline to the sea. You see, when you go to the beach or the seaside, the sea does what it does. Sometimes it's still, sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's all over the place. But your focus within yourself, but to this person, is to just be the shoreline. Regardless of whatever the sea is doing, you stay being the shoreline. And at some point they will meet you.
Yes, Jamie. I would say, do you know what? I thought of this, and I'm gonna say it. Most people are good people, right? I believe that most people are good people, and most people instantly want to help and fix. But I always say this, again, I said it with the church thing, know your limitations. Know your limitations in terms of, do you know what? I can help you in terms of just, you might need someone to talk to, or you might need someone to meet and spend some time with. You know, even us as practitioners, when we get a referral, we read the referral, and then we might have to go to our supervisor and say, do you know what, this person might need psychiatric help. This person might need to see a psychologist. This person's a bit above where we are. So I think it's just about, you know, the best way you can, you know, give someone a safe space, right, and not rush into fixing them, is by understanding yourself and understanding what's your limitations. Again, naturally, most people, I believe, are good people and they want to jump into it. And I think the best way, what Kevin said and David has said, is sometimes referring on, saying, look, and also that can be powerful. You know, sometimes someone just wants to hear, why don't you try counselling? Have you ever tried to go to the doctors? Have you ever tried this thing? Oh no, I don't want to go to that professional. No, do you know what? Look, I can't offer you what you need. So I think it's just about, again, knowing your limitations and sometimes pushing them in the right direction.
Can I just add one more thing to that? It's David. Is that also to get out of your own way? Someone taught me many years ago is that, David, you cannot save anyone. And I didn't understand that at first because I'm in the saving business, right? And it was like, no, you cannot save anyone. They save themselves. What you can do is be a part of that journey. But it's ultimately up to them. So stay being the shoreline.
Right. When a man finally says, I'm not coping, what response does he need to hear first?
Here's the thing, right? So when a man says that out loud, how many times did he say it internally? Right? And that's when it is cold red. Do not take when a man says, I'm not coping, lightly. This is the moment where do not be the person who says 5 months later, 1 month later, I should have done more. Especially a black man, when a black man says, I am not coping, that is cold red. Like, really look deep into that. This is when you take action. You really try to push for a professional, because for a man to say that out loud, what did he say to himself internally over and over again? I can't do this. I can't do another day. I'm like, I don't want to be here no more. There's so much self-talk before that external statement or that external soliloquy. So in those moments, that's cold red, from my personal and professional view.
Yeah, this is Jamie. I think Kevin's got it spot on. Like, for a black man to finally speak out, yeah, he's probably been going through it, trying to figure it out all by himself, and he's finally at that point where he's in the red line and he's finally had to say something, or something else could happen. I think for me, if someone came to me and said that, I would say it's okay. It's okay. I understand. I see all of the things that you're doing and you know what you're going through. And do you know what? I'm glad you told me, and I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I think, you know, sometimes, and you know, as much as we're saying to refer on, which yes, do so. I think in the moment, right? In the moment, I'm here for you. It's cool. Talk to me. What's going on? Because I think sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. I'm going to contradict myself to instantly go, okay, go to the doctors. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, naturally, that's something for you to get to. But I think just in that present moment of that person coming to you, just listen to them, non-judgmental. Hear them, hear what they're saying, listen to what they're going through. Make them understand that you're not less of a black man because you're going through this thing.
Do you know what? Just to go back to what you're saying, right? The reason why what you're saying is so spot on, and it just occurred to me. I think, us as people that's got experience could create a class probably once a month called something like empathy and active listening. Because if we can train people in our community to have empathy and to also have active listening skills or active communication skills, I think something powerful. So many people will be saved in many different moments. I don't want to use the word save in a sense because it's a bit, but just to, but can be saved in the moment if people knew how to have empathy and also how to actively communicate and listen. But sorry, just to add to that, because you're right, you're spot on.
No, just to go on from what you were saying, Kevin, is one of the things that me and Dave have we've done is we trained up some barbers to do active listening, and because obviously naturally that's one of the places where people talk the most, right? So what we did was we tried to put some training in place for barbers to have active listening skills, and they really enjoyed it, to be fair. So what we did was we trained them up to do active listening skills, and then we get a barber to come and he hands out free haircuts, and we also do like basically drop-ins where people can get free haircuts and talk about mental health and stuff. So like that's one of the things which what you just said is, yeah, we people within the community, because what happens is again people not knowing their limitations and saying things and jumping in, and then that person who's in crisis feels unheard, and that person's just told you I can't cope, and you've interjected with, you know what, yeah, you're right, my missus did the same thing the other day, and it's like now they're unheard. So they're in the red line, they've come to you, they've opened up, and you've almost shut them down a little. And it's not the person's fault, the barber's fault, the brethren's fault, because they're not they're not trained, they're not practitioners, they're just that's just their way. They might be that way inclined to talk, right? But we try to go into the community and give as much as we could to some of these important. We was even thinking about doing it with tattoo artists, because that's tattoo can be an hour long, right? So I just wanted to put that in because of what you just said.
Do you know what? That's there was a couple of questions that you guys, or rather, a couple of questions that I was going to ask that kind of like encapsulated your responses. So I'm going to touch on them anyway. My first question is, what unhelpful reaction or judgment, dismissing feelings or preaching at him immediately, comparing to experiences, should we avoid? Right? That is one question. The next question was, you touched on the barbershop. What roles could barbershops, football clubs, workplaces, community organisations, and even radio stations play in creating safer spaces for conversations? And then the next question is, how can partners, mothers, sisters, friends, and colleagues support men without making them feel controlled or ashamed? So I kind of like put all three questions all into one.
Unfortunately, this morning my brain's not going to work that
Do you know what?
far.
The last question,
The barbershop one.
The partner question, I think it was.
Oh, the partner one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll answer that. I think. Do you know what? A man, right? Wants to feel like a man, and I would say, Kevin's one of the things Kevin said early on, like when a man comes to you as a partner and says, "This is what I'm going through," I think, like, you have to almost, you have to support him in a way where it's like, I know what you're going through. It's okay to go through this, and I'm not going to look at you in, this isn't going to affect the way I look at you. Because I think the reason a lot of men don't want to speak to their partners in that way is because, listen, I'm on the internet, and there's this big thing on the internet at the moment where like men are sassy if they open up. Men are less than if they open up. So, listen, if you watch enough of something, it starts to affect how you feel about that thing. So if you watch enough of people online and women online saying, I get the ick because my man's too open with me, and so as a partner, I say if your husband, your boyfriend comes to you, I think it's just about still understanding that he's a man and not throwing that back in his. As soon as there's an argument, the worst thing you can do is throw that thing that he came to you with back in his face. That's like one of the biggest things I hear a lot within therapy, where it's like, I came and I bared my soul to this woman, and she actually threw it back in my face when we, a month later, 2 months later. And I think that's, something to, just check yourself on. He's come to you, how do I support him? How do I support him in a way where, I uplift him with the support? Because you can do both. You can support someone and uplift them.
I will touch on the question of what role could barbershops, football clubs, workplaces, community organisations, radio stations play in creating safer spaces for conversation. So going back to what Jamie said regarding the barbershop work, that was actually birthed from the white woman and the hairdressers, because what we found was there was a high proportion of young or even adult white women that would go to the hairdressers, and I believe it takes a few hours. Obviously, a black man's haircut, half an hour, 45 minutes, where we found that they would spend 2 to 3 hours getting their hair done. And when speaking to the hairdresser, they would come to sessions or hold a space, and they'd be like, I just feel like I'm a therapist all the time. And so that's how the barbershop work was birthed, because then we realized that, hold on, black men do the same. Yet we don't go once a month, we go historically once a week. And then we got in touch with some of the barbers, and they'd be like, and then we was like, hey, this might be a different question for you to answer or to think about, but some of the people that you do give haircuts to, I mean, what do they talk about? And then we found out that even black barbers said the same statement. They were like, bro, sometimes we feel like we're therapists. And then we're like, oh, it does happen here. So that's when, so going back, so trying to answer the question overall, with all of those projects within the community, I think what's happening is you get to go to their spaces, where that can also build the bridge in allowing that young black man or the black man to then access support, because there is a fear there in accessing support, because you have to leave your space, whatever that space looks like, where if we're able to enter their space, then that's bricks along the road that can build the bridge in getting them to then access support outside of their space.
I love that. What I would say is, and in addition to that, what I would say is, as human beings, we tend to have a default mechanism where someone shares something dark with us and we want to match it. Like, my day was really bad today. Let me tell you about my day then. And we tend to kind of match one, it's almost like we compare or we compete how dark our days can be, or, my relationship is really bad. Who want to hear about your relationship? Do you know what my woman done? And so are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Someone was
I
trying to
said
come
something.
through.
Oh, right. And what I would say is we need to train ourselves not to compete darkness, or not to compare depression with depression, relationship breakup to relationship breakup, because, as our brother said, we compare, comparing in a sense, or matching certain things don't help. When someone's coming to another person, they kind of don't want to be interrupted with their version of whatever's going on, and that's one of the things that we need to learn to do, is not align, one with the other.
Right. Right. How, sorry, how can men support one another beyond jokes, everyday banter, and begin having deeper and more honest conversations?
Show up. So just show up, whatever that looks like. Showing up
Mm,
doesn't mean turning up at their house, or it means showing. I'll give an example of my term show up. So my brother the other day, and he was going through. He had to go to hospital. He had some health issues, and he was supposed to come and check me, but he didn't, and I didn't hear from him for about 2 weeks. So I checked in with him, and he not only was he going through the health issues, but it was affecting him mentally. When I say that, he was just like, he had shut himself away, he had isolated himself. He just found himself in that place where he just didn't want to reach out, but going through the health issues that he was having, he didn't know how to reach out. So when I use the term show up, for example, in that particular moment with my friend, my mum had cooked chicken soup that night. So I'd put some in a container. I didn't tell him that I was doing this. I just put some in a container, walked round to his house, and just left it outside of his front door. And then texted him that evening just to say, bro, there's some soup outside. So that's a version of how you can show up. Because
mm.
showing up doesn't have to be, where are you? Let me meet you. Let's talk. Because that can actually be too much for the person that may be going through whatever they may be going through. So understand what showing up means for you in that moment with that person.
So David,
Sorry,
was it you that
we
said?
are, Kevin, we are coming back from the break, so if you can just give it a couple of seconds.